Hi guys, welcome to chapter 3, vendors. So working with vendors, that's what this chapter is about. As always, I recommend doing a cheat sheet for this video. I think that you'll find them really helpful in the future. And you'd be surprised that although this stuff is basic, it adds up, and having some one pages to refer to can be really helpful. All right, that's my sales job on my cheat sheet. Now, here we are on the QuickBook homepage. So you can see vendors here at the top, and if you click that little vendor button, it takes us right to the vendor center. I'm going to go back to home. So below this top section here with vendors, we have enter bills, and then we have two arrows, one going down to invoices, where we take care of customers and invoices, and another coming over here to pay bills. So what are vendors, right? Vendors are people that a business hires or companies that a business hires to provide some sort of products and services that help the business service or sell to their customers. So for example, in the DYS assignment with the Average Guy Designs, that's a graphic design agency. And so his vendors are kind of contractors and employees that he pays to do work. Now, in our Extend Your Skills exercise, we're a bakery, and that bakery is a great example. They have customers, they have wholesalers, and then they buy from vendors everything that they need for their products. And so keeping track of that can get into job costing, so you can really understand what different types of work that you do are costing and therefore profiting, and so that you know kind of what's going on. And they also tend to pass on some costs for certain services as well. So we'll start with the vendor center. So you can see this up here, all the same options. We'll head into the vendor center. So just like the customer center, right, we have this list of vendors over here. And as we scroll down, the information is updating over here. And we have recent transactions, we have contacts, to-dos, notes, sent emails. So this section could get really useful in real life if you're keeping all the information about your vendors in here, so that you can really keep track of what's going on with them. Now, if you see when you're ready to edit, you can see to the right here, we have this attachment to attach any documents and an edit button to edit the vendor. We could also just press enter or right click, or and here we are. Now we are in to edit a vendor. And it's just like the customer center, really. It's the same thing. So we have basic info here. Then we have payment and settings. And so this is going to tell us, like, all of this information here is useful, just like with customers and invoices. With vendors and bills, when we create bills, this information will update automatically, which helps us be consistent and save time. We can always change the information, but whatever we set in here will come up automatically. So we can see, like here, we can choose terms. We can also add a new term just by clicking add new. Remember from accounting class, something like this is net in 30, which means the bill is due in 30. If you see one of these due on receipt, means due when they get it. Consignment is a whole other thing. That means we never actually own it. 2% 10, that means a 2% discount if the bill is paid within 10 days. If not, the full amount of bill is due in 30. So those are common ways of communicating kind of a discount to pay early. So we can set up billing rate levels. We'll get into that later on. We can give them a credit. So a lot of times with vendors, instead of having them pay back and forth, they'll kind of give them lines of credit so that the the workers can more easily keep customer businesses in stock for whom they're vendors without things getting behind and the company, getting behind. So they have a relationship very much like a business has a relationship with its customers. And I actually recommend people to think about their vendors as customers as well. So this is where you can enter their tax ID info and check the box if they need to get a 1099 at the end of the year. Now I'm going to go down to the next tab, account settings. So this is where if we choose some expense accounts, when we enter a bill, these accounts will come up automatically. Again, we can always change them, but how convenient. We don't have to try and remember what expense that vendor used and all that. We can be consistent and faster. Now, vendor type, this is where we can keep track of what our different vendors are like. If you remember under Customer Center, here we had like how the customer had found us, a referral, newspaper ad, etc. Now, over here on the right, custom fields, define fields down here at the bottom, we can set up fields to keep track of. So we can really customize this to track whatever we want to track. Now here you can see where you click vendor is inactive. You can also edit much of this just like the customer side. So we're going to be able to, from this list, right click and have some options. While you can delete, they of course recommend choosing inactive, and you won't be able to delete a vendor if they've already been entered attached to something anywhere. If you enter an opening balance for a vendor, kind of an amount that's owed to that vendor, then that can't change. Now that kind of gets into setting up your chart of accounts for a business. So we'll do more on that later, but it's worth jotting down on the cheat sheet. You can merge vendors, and you'll learn how to do that in this chapter following the instructions, same way that you merged customers. And it will keep, of course, the transactions that are under the one customer. Now, some things to consider. So, where do you go to create fields for vendors? So we were just there. Now, one thing I'll point out, here is where we have our new vendor tab, just like we had new customer and job tab. This is where we have our new vendor, and we can also add multiple vendors. If you see that second option there, where you can import a spreadsheet of vendors. We can also go directly to transactions. And of course, so editing, right? If we go in and edit this, the place where we add additional info is under the additional info tab, or create custom fields. Now, another question. From where do you access the vendor list? Vendor Center, right? Here's the vendor list. When are you not able to delete a vendor? Like I just said, if they are attached to something else. Okay, so now let's look at entering bills. So if I click the enter bills from here, now you can see right now we're on a bill, and here's a check. And I want to point a few things out. When you get to a screen like this, do not go to that mouse and click around. Instead, use the tab button and fill out every spot as you go so you don't miss anything. And that's a great way to use QuickBooks. Now, and it walks you through in the same order that the steps will walk you through, because that's kind of best practice for QuickBooks. So from here, you can quick add a vendor by entering their name, and the chapter will go over that with you. Be sure to get the dates right when you're going through your exercises, or it can really throw things off. Reference number. Reference number here in the memo down here are really important because these two areas, you should always format things the same, and it gives you information in other places. So it's really good to use those in practice. You want to do whatever the business has been doing, whatever format of information they provide there, you want to follow it. So let's see if we pick a vendor, see how all this information kind of popped in. And North Shore Water Company. So this is a utility company. So see how that account was automatically here. Now, some other useful things. If you look over here on the right, you can see everything that's happened with this vendor. You can see the bill payment check. So that means a bill was made on 5/13, and it's paid on 6/03. And now there's another outstanding bill on 6/10. Open balance is still that same amount. So this right area can be really helpful. Now, so if we enter a bill here and we're selecting this type of account, what type of account is this? We're not making a journal entry, but what journal entry is the software making? This is an expense account, right? What is an expense? Normal balance, debit. So I would put on your cheat sheet for a bill, what the journal entry is we're debiting an expense. And what are we crediting? We're crediting accounts payable for this vendor, North Shore or whatever vendor it is, because QuickBooks is automatically kind of creating a sub account for that vendor, which is why we have all this information over here. Now, you tab through, you enter the amount, memo. Now, over here we have some options. This is where we can select, does this look familiar? Customer, job, customer, job. Here's where you can select a customer if you want to allocate some expenses to them for profit and loss purposes, or you can also check. It won't let me check unless I select someone. So I could just select a customer so that a cost is allocated to that customer for various reporting. However, if I check this box right here, I need it to be, there we go. You have to have an account over here for it to show up. So once you check this box, and once we save in new and fill all this information out, obviously, then this is saying billable to this customer. So this is going to pass this expense on to the customer. When we go to invoice this customer next time, it's going to say, hey, you have a billable charges. Do you want to charge this customer now? And then you can say yes, and it will automatically pull those on to the invoice. So again, we have the delete feature here. We also have a void feature. In real life, you typically want to use that void so that you don't, so that you don't get confused about where things went. We've gone over these sections. You can see everything at the top. Now, the one thing I didn't go over is you see right here where this bill is checked? Here is where it says credit. So we can literally click over here to do a credit instead. So let's say we entered an expense and then we realized that we overpaid this $204. So we called them, we got a credit. We just click credit, and now this goes through as a credit. Now, the other thing I want to show you, I want to make sure I don't save this, so I'm going to press clear. See right up at the top here where it says main and reports? So first of all, under the report tab, you can go to a quick report, which depending on what's selective, those can be convenient reports, and the book will walk you through using those. You can also see some other reports related to vendors over here and things you might want to know. Now, a very important feature, you see how these back and forward arrows? I can click the back arrow, and this is a really easy way while you're doing different projects to see your prior entries and to know, hey, did I pay that? Where did I make a mistake? That sort of thing. All right. So which account is credited when bills are entered? Well, we know what's debited, an expense. So the liability is credited under the vendor. Why must you specify a vendor when you enter a bill? Why are we choosing a vendor? Well, we owe them money, right? We have a liability. If we don't record who we owe, then we won't really, know what's happening. All right, so now let's go back to the home screen and let's go to this pay bills feature right over here. So let's go pay bills. Now, wow, look at all of these bills we have. Now, this is show all bills. We can select do on before and put in a date and look at bills different. We can filter by, we can sort by due date. We can do all different stuff here. But once we have a list, all vendors, show all, then we just select this. See how I'm checking these checkbox in the left? That's how you choose which bills you want to pay. Now you can see down here, once you select something, so right now I'm selected on Self Equipment Co. If we have a credit, it will show up here. If we want to take terms, discounts on a terms, we would set it here. And this would just allow us to go see that bill quickly in a new pop-up window while still having this here. Otherwise, let's say we were ready to pay these bills, we would come down here and we would choose, are we going to pay by check, to be printed? We'll do it as to be printed, and then we'll click pay select bills down over here, and it will be done. Let's see. So when we're paying a bill, which account is debited? You can see what's happening down here. What are we choosing from for payment? We're choosing between our bank accounts, checking or savings, and we choose the method. So we could select credit card, right? And then we would get to choose the accounts for our credit cards. With check, we can only choose from cash accounts, bank savings and checking accounts. So that gives you a hint if what's going to happen when we pay this bill. We're going to spend money, right? So we know that cash is an asset, which means we're going to credit cash. And so what are we going to debit? We're going to debit that liability account for Stealth Equipment that we said we owed him money. Credit is a normal liability balance. So in the first entry, when we entered bills, we credited. And now when we're paying it, we debit that liability for the vendor and credit cash or a credit card, however we're paying for the bill. All right. I think we've got everything. So down here in the payment, also don't forget about the date. A lot of times when people are doing dates, they forget payment windows, they forget about the date, which is first here. And that's why I recommend doing that tab feature and then looking through these three to see if there's anything, date, method, checking, and pay bills. You're done. Which payment date should you select for the bills? Well, you want to always use the current date, right? So let's see. Now, lastly, once we've paid the bills, the next thing that you'll be learning in this chapter is write checks, right? Or print checks. So we'll print checks because we paid the bills. Do you think we would use write checks? We would use write checks if we just paid a bill on the spot, right? We're entering the bill and then paying it because we got the bill, we entered it, and we paid it later. But we would write checks if we're just paying that bill right then and there. And I'll show you what I mean. So in this case, this is something that we're paying immediately. We can print later, or we can pay online if we paid online. And then we won't have an actual check number there. We'll fill this out, and it's all happening in one snap. So instead of using that liability account, we are just recording the expense and crediting whatever bank account or liability account is set up here. Alrighty. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to look at some reports in the report center. Which report shows... Okay, so we're going to go through some of the general reports. So from this listing here, you can see that you can select the report center and go directly here. However, you can also find a lot of things that you're looking for from here down. Company and financial, customer and receivable, and these all have their own menu out here as well. Literally every report that the book will ask you to find, they are here. So we were going over vendors and payables. So here's a vendors and payable section. And let's see, what do we have here? We have vendor balance AP aging summary. So that will look at how long we've owed money to different vendors. And then that's a detail of that. Vendor balance summary. So that's looking at what our balance is with each vendor, how much we owe each vendor. And then here's a more detailed report, so that we'll have more information. Unpaid bills detail. So this is looking at the bills we haven't paid. This is the individual bills, whereas this is how much we owe each vendor, right? And this is how long we've owed money to each payable. So let's see, accounts payable graph. So this will let us see what we owe in terms of a graph. Transaction list by vendor. So this can be a good way to see what you did if you're trying to correct a mistake or anything like that. This is where we can print out 1099s for our vendors, and this is where we can print out contact lists and phone numbers. So why is it important to enter all income and expense transactions? Well, that's easy. We need to know how profitable we are, right? Which report shows all transactions grouped by a vendor? Well, the transaction list by vendor would certainly show that. Vendor balance summary would show that as well. Which report displays only transactions affecting accounts payable? So that would be the AP aging. What does the P&L report tell you? P&L report tells us profitability, right? Company and financial, P&L, profit and loss. This is the standard. So the P&L is one of the most common. Sometimes you have to press A for all to get more info in here. So this is a P&L, profit and loss. And here you can see everything we have here. We have income, and then it tabs in fee for labs, fee for meds, fee for service income, non-medical, total income. And then we have gross profit. And then we have expenses, and we have all these expenses, and then we have pharmaceuticals, and we have all these different levels of expense with our net income at $1,680. So we have a lot of expenses that are going into that income. And so it would be worth being able to also look at, okay, what are we profiting on labs? What are we profiting on meds? What are we profiting on service income, so that we know what balance we need to be profitable, since it's obviously pretty close down here at 1,680. Now, you can drill down. I talked to someone about drilling down by clicking on the reports. There we go. I got the magnifying glass, and so now it should let me. There we go. So see, I just double clicked and now it's showing me the transaction detail by account, because that was what was totaling up there. And if I close this, we'll be back to this report. So that was fee for meds, fee for, we can close this up so that it's smaller. We can also drill into expenses. So boarding, food, and supplies. This one has these arrows, which means we can drill in. There's a few different, and you can see we bought from Bothell Pet Supply, which is an accounts payable. So this is a vendor that we had a bill from, as you can see over here. And if we drill down again, that will open that bill up. All right, guys, this is all for chapter 3, vendors, expenses, and how to allocate them to a customer, how to record them and pay them later or pay them on the spot, and the journal entries. So go ahead and attach your cheat sheet, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.